here's me doing Highland whiskies, and with my list of remaining Highland whiskies to do, and then I'm going to do, I think I was going to do some Canadian, then I'm going to do blended whiskies, then I'm going to do Irish and Japanese, and then I'm going to hit Speyside. So Speyside later on this year, and it's a massive chunk. There's loads of whiskies in the Speyside region. So I'm like, right, let's finish off the Highlands and then crack on with the other bits and pieces. So I'm doing the bits of research and making my notes for this AnCnoc stroke Knockdhu, of which this is the miniature from Mr. X. Thank you very much for this one, Mr. X, among the many that he sent through. And I look at the map as to where it is, and I'm looking through a couple of places on the net in terms of history of the distillery. So Wikipedia, all of a sudden, Knockdhu Distillery, Speyside. Okay. Malt Madness, Speyside. Right. Look on the map, slap bang in the middle of Speyside. This is where it is, right in the middle of the Speyside region. However, AnCnoc on the label, might just be able to see just under AnCnoc, single Highland malt. And if you look at the Whisky Exchange, it's in Highland. If you look at Master of Malt, Highland. So I've done my notes, I've done my research. I could go upstairs and pick another whiskey to do, but I can't be arsed. So I'm counting this as Highland because it says on the bloody label it's Highland. But this is Speyside all the way. If you look at the map, it's slap bang in the middle of the Speyside region. Anyway, so AnCnoc, which was founded in 1893 by a guy called John Morrison. Now, there is a little village called Knock, and there is a place called Knockhill. And this is where the original name for the distillery came from, which is Knockdhu, which means Black Hill. So John Morrison discovered these springs at the base of Knockdhu, Knockhill, in this area, and took them to DCL, the Distillers Company Limited, which was a sort of conglomerate of various distillers, and said, look, I found this water source, this could be good for a distillery. They tested it and found that it was like absolutely fantastic, really, really pure, quite minerally, and ideal. So they built the Knockdhu distillery in 1893 to produce whiskey for DCL's blends, the main one of which was Haig's whiskey. So this was the first distillery owned by DCL themselves as a company. It was close to a railway line which was between Elgin and Aberdeen, so it was great for transport links as well. And so they went for it, and it was like, yeah, this is perfect position. We've got a water source. There's actually some good stock of barley nearby and peat and everything like that. It's ideal what we need geographically. Let's go for it. So Knockdhu was born. It closed in 1931 due to the sort of the in-between wars depression, the Great Depression. It reopened in 1933 and then closed again in 1983, 50 years later, because of a recession, sort of worldwide. The late 70s, early 80s was quite difficult for Scotch whisky production. It wasn't as bad as the Great Depression, it certainly wasn't as bad as Prohibition, but a lot of distilleries did close down around that time, of which this was one. However, in 1988, Inverhouse Distillers bought the company. So Inverhouse have also gone. Who have Inverhouse got? Old Pulteney and things like that. Inverhouse are now owned by a big company whose name completely escapes me. There was Pacific Spirits, but I've got a feeling it's somebody else now. So Inverhouse still own AnCnoc. It was renamed AnCnoc in 1994 to avoid confusion with another distillery which is called Knockando. So Knockdhu is Black Hill, Dhu is black in Gaelic. AnCnoc is the hill, Knockando is Little Black Hill. So Knockando was arguably not that much of a bigger distillery in terms of popularity or anything like that, but it really was a case of Knockando, it's not that dissimilar. They've been going for donkey's years, so it's not like you can turn around and go, well, you changed your name or anything like that. It's not like you get these rip-off companies in China and Apple is suing them and all this lot. So it was a case of, right, we'll change our name and we'll call it AnCnoc, and that's what it is now. So they are They started off relatively small in terms of it was like a 12-year-old and a couple of other ages, but just recently they seem to have been sort of playing around with limited edition releases and things like that. Pretty highly regarded, to be perfectly honest. I can't actually open the damn thing. Sort of, you know, not a massive seller and not, you know, advertised absolutely everywhere, but it just seems to tick along nicely, and everybody that drinks it does rate it, you know, not amazing, but just well above average, a good solid whiskey. So, interestingly, this says it was established 1894. Oh yeah, I suppose because that was when they started. They started distilling in February of 1894. So the enigmatic, even on the back label, the enigmatic Highland malt says nothing about being in Speyside, even though it is. So, nose, very aromatic with a hint of honey and lemon in the foreground. Okay. Colour, amber with a slight yellow hue. It's kind of white winey, and I'm not sure I'd go with amber. It's not quite orangey enough for me. Sweet to start with, an appetising fruitiness and a long, smooth finish. So not the most complex tasting notes you'll find, but it's the back of the miniature. Give them a chance. So, honey and lemon in the foreground. See, I get a little bit of lemon, but there's something else in there as well. And it's a very, very gentle smokiness. It's not a peated smokiness, but there's just a waft of something else in there. Yeah, honey and lemon, but is that because I've just read it and it's just going in my head going honey and lemon, honey and lemon? But I can see why they've said that, to be perfectly honest. But there's something slightly astringent. It's almost like honey and lemon, like hall soothers. So the hard bit on the outside with the soft centre, but it's not a sweet, it's for your sore throat and to clear your nose. And it's got that slightly aloe vera feel to it as well. And it's very, very slightly smoky. It's not particularly massive. It's not particularly huge on the nose. You've really got to search for these aromas. Honey and lemon on the palate as well, to be honest. Not particularly massive. Not particularly deep. But what's there is smooth, it's easy drinking, and yeah, honey and lemon soothers. It really is. There's that kind of slight tang of lemon meringue pie. There is the biscuitiness of the base as well. And it's got a freshness that you can imagine would clear your nose out as well. It doesn't really feel like it, but there is a slight astringent. There's a very, very subtle smokiness to it. And it's not obvious. It's not like, oh, this has been peated or anything like that. It just gives it enough of a lift. Otherwise it would be quite plain. It would literally be like lemon meringue pie can be quite flat, for want of a better word. And this just has a slight edge to it that's just pulling all the flavours up. It's a very, very easy drinking malt indeed. Very easy drinking. You could buy that for pretty much anybody and you wouldn't have a problem with it. You're looking at about 30 quid for that. Probably find it for about 25. Between 25 and 30 quid on some kind of offer. In fact, I think at the moment, if you get it from the Whisky Exchange right now, I think it was part of a deal where it's if you buy two, you can save 5 quid. And they were selling it for about 32 quid, which knocks it down. But if you sort of imagine, we'll take that 5 off that one, that's like 27, 28 quid. Yeah, if you can find that for between 25 and 30 quid, that's pretty decent. That's, you know, and as a present, that would do no issues at all. It's got a light touch. There's a little bit of oakiness coming through as well, but it's actually working quite well with it. It's smooth. Finish is a bit thin. Not thin, just dies off quite quickly. But it ticks boxes for a decent single malt whisky. It's got a very classical Scotch taste, and I think if you were buying that as presents, it would be absolutely fine. Nobody would be offended by that. Looks pretty decent. Looks quite, it's quite a classy bottle. And yeah, not the most exciting whiskey I've ever had, but it's not awful by any stretch of the imagination. And it does a good job. It really does. I can't fault it, to be honest. I can't rave about it, but I honestly can't fault that whatsoever. And as a sort of everyday drinker, as much as I hate that term, would do you absolutely fine. So yeah, decent stuff. Whether it's Highland or Speyside, whichever way you want to go, very, very pleasant indeed. Right, that's that one down. That's me done for the night, and I shall see you the next one. Cheers.